Right, I've not spoke to you all on here for a while, so I thought I'd do a little video. Obviously did that one other week before practice. Well, yeah, I mean, in terms of practice, there's not much there's not much we can do at the moment with everything as it is. Obviously, no rehearsal rooms are open anyway, so I don't want to get onto that too much, really, the gig side of things. But I suppose it needs addressing really at some point, but. We just don't know, basically. We don't know. It's all in the hands of the promoters. Is that so? When we know, Future Sound, I would imagine will put out some sort of announcement. Do you know what I mean? In terms of what's going to happen with it. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn saying that it will be a postponement. Do you know what I mean? It's not like it's going to be cancelled outright into the ether. Do you know what I mean? It'll just be a postponement. If indeed it does get postponed. But I mean, I suppose being realistic, like people were saying about Glastonbury being cancelled or other things that are going to be happening obviously around the summer, it makes it obviously, it's hard to imagine that it's going to go ahead. And anyway, I've seen a couple of people saying, that they'd rather it were postponed to make it, like a full event rather than having to do it under any kind of prohibitive restrictions, you know what I mean? And I don't say that in a, I don't say that sort of loosely in if you will, do you know what I mean? Like, obviously the restrictions are necessary or whatever, but, it would just feel weird to do a gig like that, where, like I say, under restrictions basically. It wouldn't be as fun, would it, if you didn't have bars and stuff like that. So if it does get postponed, then, so be it really. I mean, there's nothing anyone can do about it. I don't think there's much point. I mean, I'm not being funny as well, and again, these are just my honest thoughts. That's kind of what I do on here, but I don't see why it really matters. I mean, obviously, don't get me wrong. No one's going to be happy about it if that does happen. But, to me, other than the fact that, we'll all have to wait a bit longer, yeah. But we've waited like 10 years, haven't we? Do you know what I mean? So, waiting another year or whatever, if it gets postponed, like I say, I am talking, don't take any of what I'm saying in terms of what's actually happening because no one knows, but if it's postponed by a few months or if it's postponed to the following year, it's still going to happen. Do you know what I mean? It's still going to happen. And all those people that were like, I'm off to my mate's wedding on that day. I'd really love to come, but I'm off to my mate's wedding. All those people will get a chance to come, won't they? And they'll just have to block it out in the calendars for next year. And if someone says, "Oh, you've come to my wedding," they say, "No, I want to see the music, thanks." Do you know what I mean? That's the way to do it. So yeah, as I said, I don't really want to talk about that too much. But I thought, so there's a lot of people asking, and I've replied to a couple of people on Twitter and stuff like that. But we don't know. I think there's still some people, and again, I'm not saying this critically or anything, but I think there's still some people that imagine that we go and book, we book the gigs or whatever, do you know what I mean? We go to these venues and say, "Oh, can we play a gig?" Do you know what I mean? It's not how it works. Booking agents and stuff and promoters, we have nothing to do with it. So, yeah. And obviously as well, it's complicated because there's a lot of other bands involved, do you know what I mean? It's not just us on the bill, in terms of, I don't know. Like I said, I probably shouldn't talk about it too much, but the fact that I said none of this is official, I'm just telling you what we know, which is very little, other than you can't look at what's going on with everything else and not, ultimately apply it to what we're going to be trying to do next year. So, yeah, I don't really want to say too much more about that. I know I keep saying that, but I think that will be it. Yeah, so other things, really. Yeah, the podcast, do you know what I mean? It's been really good. I love it. Me and Pete love it anyway. Do you know what I mean? Me and Pete love doing it. We look forward to it every week. It's always a laugh. But obviously, to have the other lads on individually at this stage, it's been brilliant. We've both absolutely loved it. And again, I don't know how many who are subscribed on YouTube listen to the podcast or whatever. But if you don't, obviously give it a go, man. Do you know what I mean? We appreciate it if you do. And we'd appreciate it as well. I'd appreciate it if people were subscribing on YouTube, do you know what I mean? And on Podbean, do you know what I mean? No other reason than I just like it. Do you know what I mean? But whatever. But yeah, it's been really good having Rested Lads on. And you know, we want to get everyone on at once. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know how that'll work, sort of, in terms of how it might need a bit of editing and stuff to make it really listenable, if you know what I mean. But you know, we've got some ideas and stuff for other stuff we can be doing on it. But yeah, I think especially, you know, having, I don't know how to address this entirely. But yeah, I think having everyone on has been really, I think it's been really like cathartic for everyone. Do you know what I mean? I think, well, it has been for me, you know, I assume it has been for everyone else. And I'm hoping as well that like the other lads see this, you know, see the podcast as sort of, not an opportunity to speak to the fans, but yeah, an opportunity to tell their side of, or tell stories or whatever they want to say, just interacting with fans, you know what I mean? Because that's something I'm really enjoying, and I love people interacting, do you know what I mean, and asking questions and stuff like that. And we'll do more of that, sort of answering questions. But yeah, obviously Rob's episode this week, last week got loads of views really quickly. Obviously, loads of plays, right? Obviously, it's gonna. And yeah, it was really good doing that. I mean, obviously, so part 2 is coming out next, and I don't know. I suppose part 2 is like, it's quite, you know, it's quite heavy. It's part 2 for both of us, and I don't think either of us knew that we were gonna talk about the things that we talked about at stages. Do you know what I mean? You know, the first half of it was, well, like Pete said, it's kind of in stages. So obviously you've heard the first half, you know what that's all about. But yeah, there's elements of the second half that kind of get a bit heavier, really. Not like obviously not like in a bad way, more in a what's the word? Again, like, I don't know, like cathartic, like therapeutic. The things we talked about, I didn't know we were going to talk about. I don't know if Rob was sort of intending to talk as frankly as we both did. Do you know what I mean? I think we were, you know, I think we've all been sort of honest on this podcast, but I think the second half of Rob's episode, which is obviously coming on Thursday, it's pretty heavy, to be fair. And it was difficult as well because obviously Pete sent me the edit through, because I think, you know, Pete does the edit. Pete's an absolute whiz. And that's a separate thing, really. I want to talk about Pete a little bit, but Pete's an absolute whiz at, you know, editing and stuff. So he edits the podcast for me. Do you know what I mean? And so he sent me the edit for part 2, and I think I got about 4 minutes in, and I don't know, man. It was just really hard to listen back to. Do you know what I mean? It was awkward because it is really, you know, Pete's done a really good job with it, like editing it up and stuff like that, and he was keen for me to sort of listen to it, but it was, you know what I mean, it was hard to listen to. It was hard enough to sort of record almost, do you know what I mean? But I think that's the thing with these podcasts, there's an element of, you forget that people, not that you forget that people are listening, but I don't know, it just feels easier to talk that openly, really. And you know, I've talked openly on these videos. I always have. I've always done that. But you know, I've always been relatively cagey about certain things. Do you know what I mean? Because there's other elements to the story. Do you know what I mean? That I don't necessarily feel like I could tell on my own. Do you know what I mean? I won't feel comfortable. I could, but I wouldn't have felt comfortable, because obviously there's different sides to everything that happens to every person in their life. So I don't know, the fact that having Rob on and, you know, us both talking really, really openly and frankly about things, I hope it does a number of things really. I hope it does a number of things. One of which is, I think ultimately, it'll, the first half gave people some context. I think the second half's going to give them more than context. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. It just makes things make more sense to people, I assume. And from someone, trying to imagine someone looking from the outside looking in, it's the sort of things that I'd want to know about. If a band that I were really emotionally invested in kind of sort of disappeared like we did, there'd always be that, well, why? Do you know what I mean? There'd always be that question as to why. And I think, I think that a lot of those questions are sort of answered really in the second half. And, Phil and Stu, same with them, they were very honest and, they talked about things in regards to how they felt. I'm probably not making sense now. Trying to think what I'm ultimately trying to say. Don't really know what I'm ultimately trying to say. Other than, well, I think the bottom line is, and this probably sounds a bit weird really because I've been really honest on here, but it feels like the second half of this podcast feels like a bit exposing. And don't get me wrong, it's not like the whole thing, but from memory anyway, because as I say, I listened to it back fully. But there's elements of the second half of this podcast, so I'm checking how long this is, that what's the word? I lost my train of thought there, you know what I'm like, checking the time. There's elements that are exposing, basically. A bit exposing. And I know, like I say, I've had moments like that on this channel. Sort of being open and genuine and not hiding anything, but I don't know, it just felt a bit different, as I say, doing that. But, you'll all hear it on Thursday, whenever I put it out. But as much as like there were elements that were sort of difficult because at the same time it were absolutely brilliant. Really loved having Rob on. As I say, I loved having everyone on, don't get me wrong, and everyone will be coming back on. Do you know what I mean? We've got a lot of things to talk to Stu about as well. Because I'd like to talk to Stu a bit more about his playing bass with other bands after the music, about that experience, because I found what Phil was saying about it really interesting, about playing with Theme Park and Woman's Hour and sort of being on the tours and feeling like he got more out of it, you know what I mean, in terms of seeing things and stuff like that. But just talking about that though, like, and I'm sure Phil would agree if I'd have put this to him at the time, but I think when we were heavily touring, we weren't in that mindset, were we? Do you know what I mean? We weren't in that mindset of, let's go out and do loads of stuff, whereas I'm sure if we did it now, we probably all would be. We were like kids, weren't we? We were proper kids when we did it first time. But yeah. So yeah. Thanks to everyone who's been listening to it. We like I say, we really enjoy doing it. It's not like it's really hard work or anything like that. It's a good laugh. I'm really looking forward to what we can do with it going forward. So yeah, was there anything else I wanted to say? Yeah, I'm sure there was. Let's try and remember. What were I going to say? I can't remember now, to be honest. Can't remember. But yeah, I think that'll probably do for this video. So yeah. I'm sure there was something else I had to say. It doesn't ultimately matter. I'll just make another video if I want, if there's something I want to say. Although I'm sure there is. Oh, cool. So yeah. And it's been really interesting reading people's feedback as well. Like on Twitter, people listening and stuff. You know what I mean? Really enjoyed that. Yeah, I suppose there's a balance to be found between doing this sort of stuff and doing the podcast. But like I said, we've been talking recently, and I've been talking to Pete about ideas, about doing other things. Do you know what I mean? Like other things that people can get involved in and stuff. But I'll talk about that at a different time when I started it more out with Pete. So yeah, I'm rambling now. When I realised through a couple of minutes there, I just stood and stared at walls. So I won't do that again. So yeah, I can't remember what point of this video was, so I don't really know how to head it off, other than nice one. Thanks for watching.